Hey everybody, greetings and salutations to all my friends and not friends, acquaintances, passerbys, bored people that ended up here. So, my name is Tony. I am on paper, I'm 38 years old, but in my mind, I'm more like 25. Um, and yesterday, March the 1st, was it's a pretty significant day to me for one huge reason. And um, March the 1st, 2009, 13 years ago, I was radically saved. Um, I, I understand that a lot of people don't believe in God, they don't believe in a deity. A lot of people believe there's a God, but they don't believe in the God of the Bible. They believe in a creator and a spirit, and all roads lead to him. And um, I believe, in these 13 years, God has really grown me. um, I have been through a lot, and I could have never imagined my life today back on the day that I got saved. It's amazing. And I don't know what would have become of my life had that day not happened, because it's like everything that I do, everything that I have done has pretty much been a reflection of what happened that day. Um, so I am a wife. I've been married to my husband for almost 18 years. We've been together um, almost 22 years. We have three daughters, three teenage, beautiful daughters that drive me insane, especially that middle one, because she's just like her mother. So, I was growing up, I lived in a two-parent household. We, I didn't have a lot of the problems that people today that I know they have now, and I'll get into that. Um, but I had everything I needed. Absolutely not everything I wanted. Not even an easy bake oven. My sister got one, but we'll leave that in the past. Um, my dad uh, was quite a bit older than my mom, and he had some very strange mindsets. He was not a very friendly person, and I I'm the oldest of my mom's and dad's kids together. Um, I have three older brothers who were, pretty much grown by the time I come along. So I'm the oldest kid in the household with a little brother and little sister. And I was just very jealous, very jealous natured, you know, especially of my brother and sister. The sister, I think, more because of my dad's attention. It completely went to her, no fault of hers. She was the baby. And I just was a very jealous, very negative, ungrateful, aggravating, obnoxious kid, period. Um, in school, those first several years, I was picked on. Um, I've had some, had some pretty bad experiences. I had an abusive babysitter around 4 or 5 years old. Um, And by the time I got to middle school, me and my dad were not friends. Okay. Um, he would just say really, really hurtful things to me, and they were a lot of times just unprovoked. You know, I will say nearly every time I did escalate the situation, but he would just make comments about how stupid I was. That if his dog was as stupid as me, he would take it in the woods and shoot it. If anyone should have been an abortion, it was you. You'll never amount to anything. You're not going to be worth anything. You're only going to be wanted for one thing. And I mean, it was just very hurtful, the things he would say. And I, being a lot like him, started throwing it back. So we got into some pretty heated verbal debates a lot. And, looking back, if I would have just kept my mouth shut, we could have avoided a lot of things. But I wasn't going to do that. And sometimes it would escalate to being physical. Um, and when I got to high school, ninth grade, it was one of those bad explosions, and I, went to my room just crying, and I wrote a suicide note. Um, if I would have really had the means, you know, to do that, then I think I may have. And they found the note, and I ended up sitting with a counselor, and whatever. And it was like a switch just flipped after that I decided I wasn't going to be, picked on. I was going to be a doormat. So that's kind of when my sense of humor really blossomed. I'm sorry, for my 38th birthday, the ailment I got was a leaky eyeball. Anyways, so I have this problem going on at home with the arguing and the constant bickering and stuff, and my dad, he was who he was, but he was not a Christian. As a matter of fact, he loathed Christians, and he, it's weak. It's weak people leaning on it for a crutch. There's no God. If there's a God in heaven, let him strike me dead now. Just hated them. I had no knowledge of anything. I had a babysitter once, and they had to say grace at lunch, and I had no clue what I'm talking about. I didn't know anything. I would get in arguments in elementary school over kids talking about God is real. I'm like, dude, no, it's not. Can you see him? You got a picture of him? Guess not. It's not real if you ain't seen it. And anyways, so that nature I had in me when I started dating, I was pretty dominant. I was a pretty dominant person. Me and my husband started dating. I had this mentality that a man's not going to control me, and a man's not going to, he's not going to have the upper hand. I will not be vulnerable to be hurt, and I was hurtful. I was not very nice, and it I don't know why he stayed with me, and why after all the times I'd break his little heart that he would take me back. I don't know, but I'm thankful that he did. Um, so I just go through that and I get out of high school, and I just make horrible decisions, you know, I jumped out the back door with all my stuff like a week after I turned 18 and moved out. And, I graduated early that December. So here I am, I'm 18, I'm done with school. I can go to college, but I mean, I pretty much just decide if I want to go or not. It's not like high school. And I just lived a very reckless life financially, spiritually. It just was not I just was not. I don't want my children to follow those footsteps, if you know what I mean. Um, so I ended up, making all these bad decisions. No hope really for anything. I just thought we just exist, and there's really good things aren't meant to happen to me. And I get married. We're 20 years old. Had our first daughter right before we turned 21. Um, Kept just doing our thing, and I ended up getting a job at the sheriff's office as a dispatcher, and my husband was working at the prison when I was pregnant with our second daughter. Um, he ended up coming to work over there where we were. Again, just a very negative person. I wasn't grateful for the job. I loved it, but I wasn't grateful. Um, and, and we ended up getting pregnant again. Um, Not planned. Not. It was not the best thing for me. So I thought, um, but I was pregnant. That's my baby. There's a life in there, even though it's not ideal. And we were going through a hard time. But that didn't matter. She was my baby. Um, so right after I found out pregnant, we're separated. We separated right after I found out. For about a month and a half, my grandmother had passed right before I got pregnant. And allegedly, the date of conception was the day my grandmother died. And then, my husband, he leaves. My granddad died 6 weeks after my grandmother. You know, it was just a very hard time. And so, with that pregnancy, every pregnancy, I was always anemic. And by the time the third one got here, it was really bad. And I had to go to the emergency room one day. I was dehydrated and everything. And the doctor put me out of work for a few days while I got fired. Um, Basically, I was lied on, but whatever. But they weren't going to ride that horse till April. So basically, I've just lost my grandparents. I'm pregnant. My husband don't love me. We got back together at that point, and now I'm fired. And then a few months goes by. Really rough spot in our marriage. Got in a wreck. Not my fault. My van was totaled. I cracked a knuckle. It was just a mess. And um, this jealousy and this envy and this greed and vindictiveness. Um, when I had my daughter, you know, I started partying a lot, like almost every weekend. I was I was out drinking, just living the life, partying it up. I'd leave the girls with their dad when he was off work, be gone all weekend. Sometimes they go with me. It's just a group of friends. We were partying, and that's just what it was. So, right before um, my youngest turned a year old, I went to a funeral, and it was one of my brother's best friend's mom, and he had also lost his dad. He was there when one of their best friends got into a motorcycle accident and was killed. And this guy, and he had faith. And there was just something different. I'm like, how are you still standing and you're smiling and you're going on? How are you doing this? And it was God. Um, so that was just very strange. And just so a series of things just started drawing me from that time on. It started in like February 2nd. And by February 20th, I was watching TV one night and it was a Christian family and they just had so much joy. And something hit me. And I was like, what is this? I said, what is that? And I just started bawling. And I looked at my husband and I said, who is God? Why are they, how do you get, is it too late for me? Who is he? What do I have to do can I have what they have? Like I was just, and he didn't know, neither one of us really raised that way. He, I guess, believed. We went to church with his mom, but as far as having any knowledge past that, there was none. I found myself just digging through my closet looking for a Bible from high school graduation. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I had to find it, and I'm like just losing my mind, just bawling like a little baby. And now I was a social butterfly. Okay, I know a lot of people, and I partied with a lot of people. And I had, of all my friends, I had one that I knew I need to call. I had one friend who diligently prayed for me. Just one. And she would invite me to church. I would say no, or can't make it. And she loved me anyway, but I knew I can call her, so I did. And I said, I got to get to church. I said, I don't know why, but I have to go. I gotta figure this out. So I promised her that the next time she went, that I would go with her, and that would have March 1st was because it was that coming Sunday. She couldn't. I don't know what they were doing, but either way, so it turned out to be March 1st, and I promised her I'd be there because if I didn't promise her, TT weren't going. Okay, TT was going to stay at the house. And this day, I'm partying like a rock star, and I pulled a good one too. I felt like trash, but I knew I got to go to church in the morning, so I like never fell asleep because I'm like, again, if I go to sleep, I won't wake up. I gotta go to church. I promised. I promised. I promised. And I just remember leaning over this toilet thinking, God, please, if you're real, I need to know. I need to know today. Like, I got to. I need to know. So here we go. I got to be there at 10 o'clock. It is pouring rain. It is freezing cold. I am hungover, hardcore, bad fashion. Just, ugh. I had to stop. I had to pick up my girls. They were 10 months, 2, and 4. And I had to collect them and drive them in the pouring rain on this cold day with a hangover to church. And I got there, and their 10 o'clock service, the kids go to little Bible school or little, what do they call it? I don't remember what you call it. Sunday school. Yes, children go to the Sunday school class, and the one of the preachers, he'd give a little teaching while the kids were in Sunday school, and they take prayer requests first. So he's sitting there taking these prayer requests, and people are going around the room, pray for me for this, pray for me for that, so and so sick, we need to pray for this. Well, I got a praise report, and he's like, anybody else. And I felt every hair on my neck stand up, my arms, the hairs were standing up. I had goosebumps, and it's like somebody else would say something, and he was like, anybody else. It's like, I really, no, there's somebody else, and I'm starting to hear what he's saying before he's saying it, and other people are popping up, and he said somebody has something that they have to say, and they're afraid of being judged or something to that effect. And my arm, it grew a brain of its own, and it shot itself up in the air. And I said, I wasn't, raised to believe in God. I have no idea. I said, I was verbally and sometimes physically abused as a kid, and I wasn't raised in a Christian home. I said, and I know a friend who just lost his mom, and he has faith, and then I see people who don't, and how drastically different that is. I said, and I want what he has, and I lost it. Like uncontrollable shaking, sobbing, lost it. And I dropped my, because I'm gone, man. I am gone. And when I sat up, all these people are around me that were standing over me and praying for me. And I felt like every weight had been lifted, every chain had been broken off of me. I was not hungover anymore. I I dropped my head one way and picked it up, and life was completely different. And I will never, ever forget that, because I met God that day. And what you also need to know about me is I'm very kind of like monotone, and I really, um, anything that, God does makes me emotional these days, but I'm very, just even. I don't get excited. I don't, you know, I don't get upset about things that most people do. Like, you see people just getting all emotional and crying over things that, and I don't understand it. Like, I don't have that personality, that I'm just not a very emotional person. So for me to sit there and sob uncontrollably in front of this body of people that I've never seen was, odd in itself. So I didn't know nothing. Okay. I knew that God's real. It got real. I said, and I knew that I got faith. So I got invited to go play bingo the next night. I'm going to tell you what, I knew I was going to win. I was going to hit the big money. That was my first lesson in, no, you're not. That was disappointing, but I didn't throw in the towel, because what I had experienced was real. Um, so, that first year, I got all these little tiny little children, and we lived in the middle of nowhere. My husband worked. I stayed home with all them little people. I didn't have smartphones and the interwebs. Um, so I spent that whole first year um, watching Joyce Meyer, just listening to worship songs, crocheting, and actually finishing a project, reading books. I wanted to know everything that I could. And I learned a lot about the character and the nature of God and how he works and that he still speaks and how to hear him speak. And a lot of that was just it was a developing um, stage, foundation, if you will. Because if you don't feed it, I mean, if you don't, know that you know that you know, and if you don't stick with it, um, life's happening. Okay, life will happen, and that's what happens to a lot of people who get saved like that, and they're radically changed, and then that's when the seed lands on rocky soil or whatever, that it does good and it takes, and then the storms come and it just eats it right up. um, that's where your faith is tested. That's where what you have experienced and what you believe is really put to the test, and that's what proves that it's real. um, and you grow in the faith just as you grow in life, from an infant until you're immature. You need the milk. You've got to be constantly fed and nurtured, and you've got to have people around you, and you need all the things to gain that trust, to build that trust on. And then little by little, you'll get to a place where you're not hearing God all the time, and you're not seeing all this happen, and sometimes you're alone and you don't have anybody around you to help. And those are the times when that's the growing and the maturing and the pruning, because you know things change. I gave up the partying, and I had to give up that lifestyle. And I couldn't hang out with the same people as I was. I was just on a new path. Something different was happening in me. So for the first, let's see, like 7 years, that was kind of like, the preparing and the growing and some tests and, okay, getting out further in the water. Um, and let's see, when my youngest she went to preschool, that's when I went back to work. Um, and that was a God thing by itself. I hear him, he directs me what to do. I wanted my dispatch position back. Um, that was pretty much promised to me. When the next spot come open, I'm parched. Um, time came, the spot was given to someone else, and somebody in here decided to go get a job and work in the jail instead. That was It was my body. Somebody else took over because I was afraid of the jail. I was afraid. But God had something to show me in there. And I saw it. He showed me what I needed to see. And the position, that dispatch position that I wanted so bad, he gave it to me. Only it wasn't where I wanted it. Because where we live, we have like 15,000 residents. We're a small area. We got, that's it. There's not a lot to learn. No, it's comfortable. How about that? I was comfortable with it. No, he sent me next door to the next county, which is like 10 at least 10 times bigger in population. And I was like, I don't want to go there because it's scary. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to handle all this. God said go. And I learned why. He had somebody there for me to meet. And she's now my best friend in the whole entire world. And, we established a relationship, and that was 2013. Now we get to the beginning of 2016. And, someone reached out to me about a different job here closer to home. And I was like, I don't need a job. I got a job. Everything is great. And then my best friend, she ended up quitting. And so I was like, good thing I'm out, because she's out, I'm out. I ain't got nothing to do here. And I got out and took this other job. I hated it. So I went back in a month. And after that, that's when those real big earth shaking storms started then. Um, um, less a month after I went back to that position, my father-in-law committed suicide. A couple months after that, I had a disc rupture in my back and caused me immense pain. Uh, Surgery was basically my only option, but God, because I was not doing that. I got, that put me out of work. And then I ended up with this horrible sinus infection, respiratory mess. Right after that, I go to work on a Monday morning, I get a stomach virus and had to leave. And 1 week after that, my my dad was found. He also committed suicide, and he lived right next door. And I praise God that one of the girls didn't find him because they were sick. And if they wouldn't have been sick, they would have been there and would have went and found him. And after that one, I just, because me and my dad had reconciled. I forgot that part, okay, because we had a rough relationship growing up, and I jumped out the back door and ran away, and I didn't want nothing to do with him, and off and on. And after I got saved, I reconciled with him, and then a few years after that, I moved in next door to him, um, and we had a good relationship. I loved my daddy. Um, it I never thought that losing him would impact me the way it did. Because, like I told you, I don't have a lot of emotions. Dang, leaky eye over here. And I don't know how to explain it. I'm just not affected by a lot of things. A lot of people that work in dispatch, they some of them end up with trauma from some of the calls they take, and it eats at them every day, and it consumes them. And I'm not one of them. Like I was unfazed. Um, but losing my dad really, because you pair that with um excruciating pain, and I'm on pain pills. I'm on sleeping pills for like 8 years at this point. I had an addiction to them. It wasn't a physical addiction, it was a mental addiction. Um, Now I'm on the pain pills. My dad is dead. I just did, and I stayed at work. I made it 2 months. I made it about 2 months after my dad died before God said, "Will you finally give this up for me?" And I said, "I sure will." Now, I'm going to try to. We've only been talking for like 35 minutes already. I'm rambling. Sorry, but I mean, I just want to cover all the bases, okay? This is a pretty big deal, and I really feel like God has prepared me and He wants me to start sharing this. Um, and I'm just a nobody, y'all. Seriously. Um, I I'm unworthy of this. I don't deserve any kind of platform to. I don't. You know, I am a flawed human being, but I love a perfect Jesus. And I dealt with insomnia my entire life to the point, like I said, I was addicted to sleeping pills. I am fearful, anxious, like I would just be terrified to even think about going on a trip because I'm like, the car's going to explode. A tree's going to fall on the car when I'm going down the road. I'm going to get in a major accident. The bridge is going to fall apart with me on it. I know it. And, you know, so now I'm sent home, okay, with my children. It's time for me to be a mom. I've got to heal. God's got something He's trying to do here. Um, and, we live like 2-3 miles from the girls' school at the time. And I wouldn't drive anywhere past the stoplight to go to their school. Like, I would not go anywhere driving. I was so afraid. I was, just fearful. Like, all that anxiety and mess, it was just at a new level after all that. Because, you see, a lot of us and a lot of people, you will recognize this, that if you're, one of those people that's always, you're anxious and you're afraid of these things happening, that we kind of feel like that fear is a protection because we prepare ourselves for this to happen for so long by being in fear that we feel like that when it comes, because we're just so sure that it's going to happen, but if it does, I'm prepared because I have dwelt on this thing and my mind is prepared for it even though I'm afraid. But we think that that's kind of think that that's it. That you're preparing yourself and protecting yourself through your fear. Okay, let me tell you something. That's a lie from hell because living in fear like that didn't help me at all. At all. When things happened, when my dad died, when my father in law died, fear didn't help that at all. So, anyways, so this is that kind of fear. This is the staying up all night, checking the door locks, checking the stove and the microwave and the oven, and you got to check everything. Light switches. Make sure the curling iron ain't plugged in. You ain't curled your hair in 3 months, and you're checking to see if the stupid thing's plugged in. All right? Yes, that is me. That was where I was at. And I walked by and I'd check the girls' breathing like obsessively. Just, oh my God. Some have bunk beds. I'm like on top of their bunk beds, just, are you breathing? And my daughter had a clock radio playing, and it was playing the song "Thy Will," and I just broke right there in the hallway with that song playing. And I got my journal out and I put that song on YouTube and I wrote, I feel so helpless right now, God. And I'm just sobbing. And he starts speaking. Yes, he speaks. It's a voice from in here somewhere. And it's a quiet, it's a calming, and you just know that it's not you talking to yourself. It's something different than you. And at the top it said, let the music minister to your soul. And he said, you keep your word and I'll keep mine. I will heal you. I will heal you. This is a part of your testimony. The devil must flee. Something to that effect. And it tells somebody. And it's like every song that played after that, they were all just speaking, washing over me. And when God said, you keep your word and I'll keep mine, he was referring to, then I, kept telling my friend that I was going to go see her, the best friend that I got from that job I didn't want. Yeah, her. And she lives like 30 minutes away, past that darn stoplight that I refused to go past. And, I'd tell her, yeah, I'll get up there, see you, and never did. And that next morning I said, okay. And, in the car, like, not long after I'd even been in the car, the song comes on. It was Casting Crowns, and there's a line in the song, there's a place where your fear has to face the God that you know. I'm like, get out of here. And that just, it's like confirmation. And I go see her, and my husband's like, you stay as long as you need to. I'll get the kids, because it was such a big deal. And he broke it. God broke that fear and that anxiety off of me. But I want you to understand, and he can do it for you. But the only way he can do that is for you to take a step. You've got to take that step. If I would have just stayed in my house and waited for him to just break it off, I'd still be sitting in that same spot today, just scared to death. I had to take that step. But you've got to get to a place where you know his voice. And you don't get to know his voice without getting to know him through his word. You've got to seek him out. He's right there. He's a gentleman. We have free will. We have to choose him. He's already chose us. But he is a loving God. And he's not going to force you to love him. Like, that's not love. He's not a dictator. He knows what's best for us. But our pride gets in the way and we think we know better than him and do things our own way. And that's how we get into a big mess. We're stuck in a pickle because we ain't listening. And sometimes we want him to bless our sin. We want him to, just open the gates of heaven and pour out all these financial blessings on us. And it's about so much more than that, It's not about blessings. He died to save us. That's the blessing. To forgive us, to give us a way out of sin, not a way to sin. And a lot of people don't want to hear that. We want to hear, live my truth. I'm going to live my truth. You live your truth. You better live in his truth. Because what if your truth offends my truth and my truth offends your truth? We can't have unity there. There's got to be a standard. So, anyways, I'm getting off track here. We've been talking for 45 minutes. I feel like I ain't said nothing. Anyway, so he broke that fear and stuff off of me. And, from there, from that point to where we're at now, he is just, I have gotten to the point now that I know it's him. When I know it's him and I can take him at his word. Okay, I've been through things and I've seen things, we've experienced things. My daughter was so depressed and she was suicidal at 13, 14 years old. And what do you do? I can't, I can't walk on eggshells around her. I can't, you know, just start throwing things at her to make her happy in hopes that she won't. No, I had to still be a parent and a disciplinarian, and I had to be, real with her. And I had to put her in God's hands. And I had to pray that God would send people into her life that would speak into her, that would encourage her, that, that they would, that God would reach her. And I watched that happen. I watched him save my daughter. All of my girls, really, but she was in a very dangerous place. And he radically saved her, just like he did me. And she made the decision, her and her sister, to get baptized 2 days after that in church. And she wanted to give her testimony to the church of about 300 people. It may not sound like a big deal to you, but if you knew this kid, it's a huge deal. So he saved that. He saved my husband from suicide. He's healed me. He set me free. I've watched him change families. I've watched him restore. I've seen so much. And there's no way, there's nothing anybody can say. Either, your science and your facts and all this knowledge that anybody has. Okay, I get it. He's real. And I know he's real. It defies logic. It doesn't make sense, and I'll tell you that. I'll be honest with you about that. No, it does not make sense. You can't believe it with a natural mind. That's why when you're born again, you're born again. You're a new person. And the spirit man is alive. You're a three-part being: soul, spirit, and a body. Your soul and your body, that's where your soul's your mind, your will, and emotions. That's where it's carved out by experiences and by knowledge and everything else. Your thoughts and blah blah blah. Your spirit is dead until God breathes life into it. And then the Holy Spirit's with you, and that's where you get that little conflict, because there's things I want to do, but they ain't right to do, or they're not beneficial to do, and there's a war, there's conflict there. So without the Holy Spirit, you can't make heads or tails of it, because it's not logical. It don't make sense. And if that's what you're waiting for, then you ain't never gonna figure it out. But he does give us the promise of the Holy Spirit living within us, and that is the Spirit that's where he's speaking to you. That's where he's growing you. That's what he's trying to mature when you get into conflict, because you're not supposed to react in the ways of the world. You're supposed to be completely different. instead of wanting to fight everybody and wanting, people to suffer, and just, you can't act that way. And that's why the Holy Spirit comes, and He's your counselor, and He's the one that's with you. And the goal is for you to become more like Him and less like yourself. Like, all your selfish motives and desires have got to go if you're going to make it in this thing. And it is so worth it. It is hard, but it is so worth it. So I hope I didn't bore y'all to death. It's only been 50 minutes. I've just been rambling on and on and on. I mean, I don't know where it's going. I don't know where this is going. Okay? We're going to go somewhere with it. Because this is the first. I mean, He's calling me into this mess, and He's calling me to new things, and this is it. But I do want you to know that I don't have to know you to tell you I love you, because that's what God gave me. I have a heart of love. And it doesn't matter what you do or what you say, I love you. And what I want is for other people to know the love of Jesus, because that's the love that I try every day to give away. My favorite scripture is Matthew 5:16. And that is, let your light so shine before men that they will see your Father see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. That's what Christians are supposed to be. When you see us, you're supposed to see God. We're supposed to be so different in how we live and handle things and how we treat people, that you see there's something else at work here. And that is my prayer for each and every one of you. Anyone who stumbles upon this, I don't care if you want to cuss me out in the comments. I don't care if you want to call me a Looney Tune, because you won't be the first. I assure you. Okay? I ain't all there. You haven't really seen that yet. But I do. I have a lot of personal testimonies to share, and a lot of things that God's dropped in my spirit over the years. And I think, these 13 years have been preparing me for whatever this is about to be. I don't know. It's not about me, it's about Him. So, yep. If you watch this, if you don't, I love you. I'm praying for you. I pray God will open your eyes. I pray that His Spirit will fill you. I pray that any need that you have be met. But most of all, I pray you know Him. Bye.